After the fall of Rome, Europe went into the period commonly known as the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages lasted from the 5th century to approximately the 12th century. During the Dark Ages, standard of living decreases. Death increases due to violence and disease. There were also less education and less literacy. Progress was reversed during the Dark Ages. Fear was struck throughout the Roman Empire. Right before this period, the Huns from Central Asia migrated until they reached Western Europe. They were skilled riders and battled fiercely to drive out the Franks, who were Germanic people. The Franks left to Gaul. The Franks had divided their lands between sons after the death of their father. This caused civil wars, and the Franks were weakened. There was a specific group of Franks called the Merovingians. King Clovis unified the Franks in Gaul and converted to Christianity, which caused the religion to spread. Kings after Clovis were known as do-nothing kings. Though King Charles the Hammer Martel did ensure Christian survival by initiating the Battle of Tours in 732, which halted Muslim advances. Then there was King Charlemagne, who reunited the Empire of Franks and controlled West Europe during his rule. Charlemagne encouraged learning. He initiated wars to convert Saxons for 30 years. This was known as baptism by the sword. This was the first time that Christianity was spread through violence. By 800 AD, he was the Emperor of Romans. Around 900 AD, Vikings migrated from Scandinavia to Europe. Most Vikings were farmers and harvested during the spring and fall. There were a few warriors who raided and pillaged during winter and summer because they could not farm during these seasons. Their raids were a quick hit and run. Vikings usually attacked traders for money, tradable items, food, and clothing. They looted and burned communities along the coasts and rivers of Europe. Because of the invasions by Vikings, Muslims, Magyars, other tribes, and other kingdoms, kings and emperors of Europe were too weak to maintain law and order. People needed protection for themselves, their homes, and their lands. The government was also weak. There was political instability and constant warfare of German kingdoms. There was no power without Rome in control. To solve the issue for a basic need for protection and government stability, a new system was evolved called feudalism. Feudalism was a loosely organized system of rule in which powerful lords divided their lands among lesser lords. In exchange, the lesser lords would pledge service and loyalty to the greater lord. In feudalism, there are many terms to know. The feudal contract was an unwritten exchange of pledges between lords and vassal. In medieval Europe, vassals were lesser lords who were granted land in exchange for service and loyalty. Fiefs were estates granted by a monarch to a lord or by a vassal to a knight for service and loyalty. Manors were lords' estates, which included one or more villages in the surrounding land. Knights were nobles in Europe who served as mounted warriors for lords in the Middle Ages. And serfs in medieval Europe were peasants to a lord's land. Feudalism was set up as a pyramid. It was a hierarchy, which is the division of power and responsibilities, where people at the top had more power than those at the bottom. Monarchs are at the top of the pyramid and claimed ownership of the land, but also divided lords with land, who gave monarchs loyalty and protection. Lords provide vassals with land, who in return give lords loyalty and protection. Vassals provide knights with land, and knights give vassals loyalty and protection. Knights also provide serfs with land. All the way at the bottom, serfs pledged knights, vassals, and lords loyalty, which meant that they were bound to the land and they worked on. Some of the serfs farming would go to nobles, and they paid taxes and fees. The hierarchy of feudalism is similar to a sort of hierarchy that the school system has. At the top in the monarch position is a superintendent who supervises the schools in the area. Next in the lord position are the principals, who usually there are two. The principals supervise their school as a whole. Then there are 4 deans in the vassal position. They supervise specific parts of the school. Then, in the knight position, is the faculty, usually consisting of 160 people. The faculty supervises the students. Finally, all the way in the serf area, 1,200 students give loyalty to the faculty, deans, principals, and superintendents. Basically, in feudalism, the group with the least amount of people have the most power and are in control. The groups decrease in power as more people are added, and the groups lose more control of people below them. Things change for the lives of peasants and nobles as a result of feudalism. For peasants, life revolved around working. They worked and lived on manors. Most of the peasants were serfs, and they were bound to the land. These peasants were paid with products like grain, honey, eggs, and chickens, and were entitled to farm acres for themselves. They lived a simple diet of black bread and vegetables and rarely lived beyond the age of 35. A family had to share one room with animals. Peasants had to pay fees for Christmas, Easter, marriages, inheritance, and the usage of the local mill to grind grain. The lives of nobles were much more glamorous. For feudal nobles, warfare was a way of life. Boys were trained to be knights, who adopted the term chivalry. Women had limited rights to inheritance under the feudal system. Women also took hand in politics. For nobles, tournaments were big in fashion.